Hi students, here's your tutorial for creating a rendered image inside of Autodesk Inventor. What I'd like you to do is first, before we do anything, we want to set up our render to look really nice. One of the things that we don't want to render is any of these axes or planes or anything like that. So under Object Visibility, you can turn off all work features, and we would get rid of any of those planes or axes that you made when creating your part. Next, inside that View tab, we can change some of the appearance of our object. For example, in the shadows, if we click down in the arrow, you can activate ground shadows. You can activate object shadows or ambient shadows, maybe from around and other objects. I like some ground shadows, maybe some object shadows. And you can change things around. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. It's your render. You want to just make it look nice. Next, underneath reflections, you can actually set up reflections. So say it was sitting on like some type of metallic surface, this would reflect down. You don't have to do this, you can get rid of that. Other things you can do is you can go into settings of any of these, and inside settings you can change the different lighting directions and what shadows look like. So the density of a shadow, the softness, any ambient shadows that may be available. And right now that's only going to apply to the to light situation. There's many other different situations that you can actually set up. So for example, if I click two lights and say I want to put it on a country road, zoom out, here is a country road, and I can actually render this as I want as like a VR that I can load into my VR if I want. Now that's ugly, so I'm not going to do that. What's an infinity pool? They add new stuff every year. Okay, not really sure what that is. There's things like, what else we got here? A empty lab. We could load up an empty lab, and there it is sitting on a table. So if someone gets bored at work and they want to play with your Automata. For me specifically, I'm just going to stick with two lights. You can play around with it. I do have a few different shadows on. You can change between having it as a perspective orthographic or a perspective. Perspective is how actually the eye sees. So I might go ahead and do that, and then I might just rotate it up a bit, so I can see kind of my cams inside. You know, again, trying to get it to look as nice as I can in the middle of the screen. So now to actually render after I mess with a few things, what you can do is go into environments. Inside environments there is something called Inventor Studio. So go ahead and click on Inventor Studio, and it will load an entire new tab for rendering. You can mess around with local lights, camera, studio lights, but just remember whatever you set under view is what it's going to set to render it as. So I have it as two lights. This is what it's going to render. I'm going to go ahead and select render image, and for my general I'm going to change the output to 1220 by 1080 by clicking this aspect ratio, make it as large as I want. I'm also going to grab the zoom tool over here on the right, and I'm going to zoom a window, and I'm just going to draw kind of a box around my object, so I kind of zoom it to its extents. Now if this cuts out the top or the bottom, you'll see during the render, and we can change this. My output, you can save the rendered image in a very specific spot. So if we wanted to save this, we could, you want to save it for one. So I can put this in my IED folder. And I can call this my rendered image. And then underneath render, you can set up how you want it to actually render. So in this case, you can set it to render for 1 minute, and it will just do its best and try to give you the best look in 1 minute. You can render by iteration, so you can have it render 32 total times. I shouldn't say, it'll render kind of one frame at a time, but it'll render over 32 times. And you can bump this up, you can bump the time up, or you can change render until satisfactory. It's all about what time you have in class. For me, I'm just going to render until satisfactory, and then I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back you will kind of see what it looks like. So we'll start the render. This little render output box will come up, and so far it's a Gaussian render, and it doesn't look too great, but it's rendering as it goes. So right now it's rendered for roughly about 7 seconds, 11, 12, 13, and I'm going to let it render here. I'll pause the video, I'll start it back up when the render is complete, and it will show it up here in the progress bar. So after about 3-4 minutes, the render completed. You can see it's still a little grainy. I only did 32 iterations. You can bump that up to 90, 100, 200. Just remember that the more iterations, the longer it will take to finish this. So if I scroll up, you can kind of see that the render is complete, and it doesn't, of course, look great. It looks a little better than your normal, the normal way that it's modeled inside of Inventor. Again, more iterations will make this look nicer. So I'll go ahead and I'll save this image as my rendered image, and this will be the first thing that I need to do for my development.